Okay, please, moderators, please start the session.
I'm George Lau, Hong Kong, China, and it's my pleasure to initiate the hepatology webinar APASL based on the best publications in hepatology internationals in 2020. And today, our topic will be focused on metabolic associated fatty liver diseases. And we have two very important papers, which is most cited in 2020, one from China and one from Japan on the issues of fatty liver diseases. And we have two very prominent chairpersons today to chair the sessions. And they are Professor Jacob George from Australia and Professor Vincent Wong. So I would like to pass on the chairmanship to the two distinguished fatty liver diseases experts and to start the sessions. Professor Jacob George, please.
Thank you very much, George. And thank you very much to all of those who are online listening to this very important webinar. As you know, over the next decade, if not already, fatty liver disease will be the one disease that's inundating all our clinics. It will become the most important cause for liver transplantation, for liver failure, and also for HCC. And a lot of papers in the last couple of years on MAFLD have suggested that. So our first speaker to present his paper is Dr. Yuan Kai Wu from the Department of Infectious Diseases in Guangzhou, China at the Sun Yat-sen University. Dr. Wu is currently working in the Department of Infectious Diseases at the third affiliated hospital, Sun Yat-sen University, since 2007. He finished his residency and specialist training and has focused on clinical research on hepatitis B and its complications such as cirrhosis. He's also interested in the prevalence, and this is the topic of our discussion today, on the prevalence of MAFLD, which is the official term that we use in the Asia Pacific, and that's been endorsed by the Chinese Society of Hepatology. And he's going to present his paper, the paper entitled The Epidemiology of Fatty Liver Disease in Mainland China, with analysis by adjusted gross regional domestic product, a meta-analysis. And Professor Mindy Yuen from Stanford is the senior author on the paper. And in fact, Mindy is actually coming to the Store Liver Center at Westmead in a month or so to spend some time with us. So welcome, Mindy, and welcome to Kevin Wu. And I'll let him have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jacob, and good afternoon, everyone. Am I going to start my presentation? Okay.
Yeah. Just make it full screen. Right.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, because I cannot share my screen right. So
no, we
I
can
need
see
to...
it. We can see it.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. The secretary helped me to share my screen, and I get control. So it's my great honor to be here to present our study here. What we going to talk about is the prevalence of NAFLD in mainland China, and the Dr. Mindy Yuen is the corresponding author. So we all know that. I'm sorry, I can not control the slides.
Yeah, if you just say next slide, perhaps the secretariat can move the slide.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe it's because the
One
internet.
slide back.
Yeah, one slide back.
Yeah. Okay, that's
okay.
good.
Thank you. Sorry for that. So we all know that NAFLD is the leading cause of chronic liver disease globally, and also in China. And we also know China is the largest country in Asia by land mass and population, encompassing 56 ethnic groups. And this diversity have gave rise to large difference in local customers, diets, climates, or socio-economic levels. And all this will affect the epidemiology of NAFLD in China. In fact, the prevalence of NAFLD, the prevalence of NAFLD varies between the studies in China. So the meta-analysis is needed to access the detailed prevalence as well as incidence and mortality of NAFLD in mainland China. And at the time of we launched this study, there is no high quality meta-analysis. So we conducted this study. Next, please. Yeah. So we conducted the meta-analysis according to the PRISMA statement, and we registered the study on Prospero. And because there are less studies diagnose NAFLD based by MRI or CT scan, so we enrolled studies diagnose fatty liver or NAFLD on ultrasound. And there are some studies enrolled some high-risk population or low-risk population. So our focus is the prevalence or incidence for general population. So the main focus is the general population, and it's defined as participants enrolled from a non-clinical community setting or from a routine health checkup clinics in this study. And the high-risk population was defined as cohorts with specific risk factor for NAFLD, like diabetes, obesity, or postmenopausal females. And the low-risk population is defined as lean, non-diabetic, non-obese population, or populations excluded with other risk factors for NAFLD. Next. Next, please. We searched Cochrane Library, PubMed, and EMBase from inception to December 3rd, 2018, and we screened over 3,000 studies. And finally, we enrolled 167 studies and included over 1.4 million participants. And we also excluded some duplicated studies and also different studies with from duplicated population. So we only enrolled 167 studies, and the main focus is the prevalence of the analysis. We enrolled there are 149 studies, and we based on the different population, we divide to three different parts: overall population, general population, high risk, and low risk population. Next, and also we want to know. Next, please. We also want to know the instance of the NAFLD in China, but there is less studies. We only have 18 studies. And also we want to know the change of the degree of fatty liver and also the outcome of those patients. But we only have 9 studies here. Next. Yeah, next. Next. Thank you. So, and next. Next, please. And they, because and we know they study peer there are a lot of studies and to more accurately reflect the time trend of NAFLD prevalence, we use median year of study period instead of year of publication to stratify the studies. Because the publication year will always delay for 1 to 2 years or even longer. So we use the median year of study period to stratify the studies. So we got three groups. And also we want to know the prevalence, whether the prevalence will change by the economic levels. So we use the gross regional domestic product per capita. And to account for currency inflation and imbalance in economic development in different provinces and at different time periods, we calculate the adjusted GRDP based on the mean GRDP per capita during the study period. We calculate the GRDP by the mean GRDP during the study year, and then times the currency inflation to 2019, and then we change the currency to dollars, and we divide the studies into 4 groups based on the quartile of this GRDP per capita. Next, please. And the pooled overall prevalence of NAFLD is, yeah, okay. The pooled overall prevalence of NAFLD is 29.8%, and with a higher prevalence in male than in female, which is 35.4 versus 24%. And in general population, the prevalence is 28.83%. And in high-risk population, especially in diabetic population, the prevalence is 51. In obese population, the prevalence is 66. And in low-risk population, the non-diabetic population, the prevalence is 30%. And in lean population, the prevalence is 11%, 11.7%. Next, please. Next. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So we can see here, we can find that the prevalence of NAFLD varies in different region in China, in mainland China. The North China have their reported the highest prevalence, which is 35.7%, And the Southwest China reported the lowest prevalence, which is 21.5%. And we can also see the prevalence of NAFLD increase by the study period from 25% to 30% from 99 to 2008 period to 2013 to 2017. But this difference didn't reach a statistic difference. And we also find that the prevalence of NAFLD increase with the GRDP per capita, but this trend leveled off in the highest GRDP group. Next, please. Next. So this figure shows the GRDP and the prevalence of NAFLD by province. The color of the different province represents the GRDP in 2019, and the color of the name of the province represents the prevalence of the NAFLD. So we can see that the Heilongjiang province shows the highest prevalence of NAFLD, which of over 50%. Next. And Hainan province shows the lowest prevalence of NAFLD of 9.7%. Next, please. And the adjusted GRDP showed some correlation with the prevalence of NAFLD, but the prevalence of NAFLD increased with the GRDP, but the highest group has the comparable prevalence with the third highest GRDP group. Next, please. And here we can see in the general population, the prevalence of NAFLD increase with the age, but this trend also leveled off after in the age group of 62 to over 60 age group. So we can see that the prevalence increase with the age before 80 years old, and not 80, 50 years old. Sorry. And also the patients with diabetes have a higher prevalence with 51% than non-diabetic population. And for BMI, we can also find the higher the BMI is, the more the prevalence of NAFLD is. And in the population with a BMI over 28, the prevalence of NAFLD is over 70%. So this is very easy to understand. And next, please. And also we can find the postmenopausal female have a relatively higher prevalence than general female, but there is no difference between urban and rural population, and the educational level didn't change the prevalence of NAFLD in mainland China, and there is a trend of there is a decreasing trend of by the physical activity. The last here we can see here, but there is no statistic difference, and we can also see that other the non-Han Chinese have a relatively higher prevalence of NAFLD than Han Chinese. The patient with hyperuricemia have a prevalence of 45%, which is higher than non-hyperuricemia population. Next, please.
I think we go to the previous slide, number 12.
Number 12, yes. So my slides is still stay on the 13.
We can see number 12.
Yeah, we can see. Yeah, I can see number 12. Thank you. Sorry, maybe it's because of the internet. The instance of, we also study the instance of NAFLD in mainland China. There is only 18 studies reported the instance of NAFLD, and the overall instance of NAFLD is 56.7 per 1,000 person year, which is higher in male than female. But the study year and the GRDP and shows no inference to the instance of NAFLD. But we found that the South China, North China has a higher instance than other area. And the Guangdong, Shandong, Tianjin province have a relatively higher instance of NAFLD. Next. And we also want to know the mortality, the outcome of the NAFLD in mainland China, but there is less study. So we only enrolled, we have 9 studies studied the degree of hepatic steatosis by ultrasound follow-up, and 41, some patients resolved, the fatty liver resolved or decreased, and most of the patients have a stable fatty liver, and also some patients have increased fatty liver during the follow-up without any intervention. We can see the instance here. Most of the patients is stable, and we also study the mortality of the patients, and we only have 2 studies here, and the mortality of NAFLD is 7.3 per 1,000 person year, and the majority of the death is not the liver related, but cardiovascular related. Next, please. Next. Yeah, so my cardiovascular disease is 14, and less people died of liver-related events. Next. So our study have some strengths because such as our study based on the study period instead of the year of publication, which will have delay 1 or 2 years, and we use the adjusted GRDP instead of unadjusted, and we covered majority of the population and area in mainland China. But we also have some limitations, like most of the study have a higher heterogeneity, and there might be some election bias, especially in some province. There is only one or two studies as well, and the same, and the outcome data were limited. There's only several studies here, and this is calling for more studies for outcome of NAFLD patients in China. Next, please. So the conclusion of our study is that the NAFLD is very common and affecting almost 1 in 3 in the general population of mainland China, which is higher in North China, in areas with higher GRDP per capita, and among the non-Han ethnic minority groups. At the prevalence of 28.8% of, and with 1.4 billion population, mainland China has an estimated NAFLD disease burden of over 400 million people, and this will definitely rise in the coming decades. So this will be a very huge challenge to us, and more researchers are needed to investigate the long-term outcome of NAFLD, and additional research and better health education and public policy are urgently needed to prevent and curtail the obesity epidemic and related metabolic disease that contribute to NAFLD development and progression. Next, please. And I want to thank you all the authors, all my colleagues. Well, I want to thank you for their works, their helps in this study, and especially I want to say thank you to Dr. Mindy Green. He gave me a lot of support, and I learned a lot from her. And next, please. And also, I want to say thank you to all the colleagues in Dr. Wayne's lab, and I learned 1 year in Stanford, and I learned a lot, and I have a wonderful experience there, and I learned a lot. Thank you. Next.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kevin. That was a wonderful talk, and it was great that you could be mentored by Mindy. I think it's a huge effort that you've done. Despite English not being a first language, you did extremely well, and it's such a large population, and it's going to be the epicenter of MAFLD going into the future. So I think this sort of data is the core of trying to develop effective public health policies on a nationwide scale. I think we've only got time for one question, and just because there are a few questions in the chat box, but if I can just ask you one question. What you showed is that the prevalence of MAFLD was really quite closely related to the regional GRDP, but the incidence was not, or they didn't seem to be. Is that just because the populations are heterogeneous? You would have thought that if the prevalence is higher based on income, then the incidence also should be based higher, the higher the income was. So I couldn't really put my head around what the answer to that was. Either Professor Wu or Mindy.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. George, and I'm not sure I also don't know the reason. I think the prevalence of the NAFLD and the NAFLD maybe increased with the GRDP, but the instance maybe they are a lot of other influence factors, like the population, the people pay more attention to their health and practice physical practice activity is higher in the recent years, and also there is less study, for instance, in instance of NAFLD analysis. So maybe there is some bias. So we need to do more research for this.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, yes, Mindy, you need to unmute.
My computer audio doesn't work, so I have two computers side by side. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to clarify that Dr. Wu's study focused on prevalence, not incidence, but we recently published another study in Journal of Hepatology, just went on press fairly recently, just a few weeks ago, on global incidence of HCC. And a lot of the studies are contributed from China, mainland. So we were able to do a subgroup analysis for China, and the incidence increased also in China. And in fact, it increases at a higher rate compared to studies coming from outside of China. And as with the studies of prevalence of NAFLD, the majority of the studies come from Asia, most prominently China, Korea, and Japan. So we were able to compare that. We did not do an analysis by GRDP because it's focused on global, so we were only doing it by country. But to just answer the question that yes, the incidence also increases in mainland China, in fact at higher rate than other areas.
Thank you. And I guess I just want to make one more comment. I mean, it looks like small studies, but obviously it looks like about 10% or maybe a bit less of the MAFLD population die from liver disease. And the rest is really 14 of the patients died from cardiovascular disease. And I think from a policy and political level, not only is there required education in China for MAFLD, but you're going to have a tsunami of cardiovascular disease also in the coming years, and that's actually very, very worrying. In the interest of time, we might just move on. Thank you very much, Mindy, and thank you so much, Kevin. And I'll hand over to Vincent, who is going to do the next case.
Thank you, Professor George. So the next speaker will be Dr. Ito from Japan. So this would be our I would say that complementary to the first presentation. So this time the focus is on the situation in Japan, also a meta-analysis, but this time we would also talk about some forecasting data on what we will see in the next 15 years or so. I would also like to highlight that Dr. Ito is involved in many multi-center studies in Japan and enlightening us on the epidemiology of fatty liver disease in this part of the world, and in particular in Japan. And Professor Mindy Wen is also the senior author of the paper. So this is a testimony of how much she has contributed to the field, not only in terms of science, but also nurturing the next generation of researchers all over the world. And in particular, many of her mentees are from the Asia Pacific region. So on behalf of the APASL, we are actually very thankful for her leadership and guidance. So without further ado, I will pass the time to Dr. Ito to tell us about his excellent paper. Dr. Ito, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind introduction, Professor Wong. Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you again, Professor Wong. I'm Takanori Ito from Nagoya University, and I'd like to thank professors in APASL for giving me this special opportunity of presentation. It's a great honor. Today, I'd like to talk about our research entitled The Epidemiology of NAFLD and NAFLD. In Japan, the meta-analysis with individual and forecasting analysis. So let me start my presentation. In a review of the epidemiology of NAFLD in Asia, the prevalence of NAFLD is most countries of Asia were similar to the West, about 30%. However, Japan showed a much lower prevalence with 22% in this study. On the other hand, the people of Japan are known to enjoy some of highest life expectancy in the world. Here, several questions can be raised. Does Japan really have the lowest prevalence rate of NAFLD in Asia of the world? Are there regional differences? What are the reasons for this low rate, such as the diet and the genes? Is NAFLD prevalence increasing in Japan with westernization? So the aim of our study, we aim to characterize the epidemiology of NAFLD in Japan, and particularly on NAFLD. With a systematic review and meta-analytic approach, combining study level with individual patient level data, we investigated the prevalence, incidence, and critical outcomes of NAFLD in Japan. This study consists of two parts. First is the conventional meta-analysis. Second is the individual patient data meta-analysis. We asked each author to share important clinical data for this Japan NAFLD study. At first, we assessed the prevalence of NAFLD in Japan with conventional meta-analysis. From the initial 4,297 records, after duplicated and ineligible studies, we included 115 records as full text review. Finally, 73 studies were selected for study inclusion. Of these, we performed the prevalence analysis and the incidence analysis from without NAFLD and outcome analysis in NAFLD. So this is the first result. The overall pooled NAFLD prevalence was 25.51% in general population in Japan. In most studies, NAFLD was diagnosed using ultrasonography. Data were available for all 8 regions in Japan, which showed a significant regional differences. Highest in Shikoku area, over 30%, and lowest in Chubu area, 20%. This distribution is like that of type 2 diabetes, I think. So next is this is analysis for risk factors of NAFLD. Of these, the significant factors of NAFLD were male and the recent study year and by the region. And almost all studies was based on ultrasonography diagnosis, but there was significant differences on diagnostic method. Notably, there are no significant differences between rural or urban or income levels, such as the GPP and the prefectural income per person. So our data is not same with the first presentation by Dr. Wu. This slide shows the Bayesian trend and forecasting model of NAFLD prevalence in Japan. In trend analysis data from 1984 to 2020, the estimate rate of change in NAFLD prevalence was 0.64% per year. In forecasting analysis, the estimated prevalence was 39.3% in 2030 and 44.8% 2040. So next is the incidence and outcome of NAFLD. Among cases without NAFLD at baseline from 6 studies, and annual NAFLD incidence was 23.5 per 1,000 person years. NAFLD incidence in our Japan study is lower than other Asian countries in Lancet GH paper. So the HCC incidence was 7.6 per 100 person years. HCC occurrence rate is higher than other Asian countries, but this may be due to the difference of study settings. Overall mortality rate was 5.9, but this data was comparable with the previous paper. So let's move on to the individual patient data meta-analysis. So first is the prevalence and characteristics of lean NAFLD in Japan. Among the NAFLD population, is the 20.7% were lean and the BMI 23, and 53.4% were overweight, and 26% is the obese. The prevalence of lean NAFLD is highest in Chubu area and lowest in Chugoku area. However, the Chugoku cohort was very small, only one cohort, so there were no significant differences among the regions. Compared with non-lean NAFLD, characteristics of lean NAFLD were the following: the older, lower waist circumference, lower proportion with metabolic factors, and the lower proportion of the significant fibrosis and PNPLA3 risk GRL. So next, PNPLA3 data were available from 3 cohorts. NAFLD patients have more ZZ rate compared with non-NAFLD. So among only NAFLD compared to obese NAFLD, we found the higher CZ rate and the lower CC rate frequencies among the lean and overweight NAFLD. Finally, we assessed the outcome by BMI with individual patients' data. So we included 4,300 patients with NAFLD who had outcome data from 2 cohorts. All cause mortality rate differed significantly by BMI. Lean NAFLD had the highest mortality, following by overweight and then obese NAFLD. So importantly, the main cause of death in lean NAFLD are non-liver related diseases, including cardiovascular diseases and extrahepatic malignancies. However, Cox regression analysis showed the independent factors associated with all-cause mortality were older age, male sex, and diabetes, and higher FIFO index, but not lean state. So this is the summary of our study. In conventional meta-analysis, NAFLD prevalence in Japan was about 25% in general population. However, the NAFLD prevalence is increasing and forecasted to reach 40% in 1930 and 45% in 1940. In individual patient data meta-analysis, lean NAFLD prevalence was about 21% in whole NAFLD. For prognosis of lean NAFLD, this is controversial, but our study showed the lean NAFLD had poorer prognosis than non-lean, especially due to non-liver related death. So lean NAFLD was known to be associated with several risk factors such as unhealthy lifestyle and genetic risk, such as PNPLS3 and the disturbance of gut microbiota and so on. Generally, in lean or non-obese NAFLD, NASH and severe fibrosis are less frequent from the result of previous studies. However, there are some high-risk groups with rapid regression. So we need the predictive markers for high-risk lean NAFLD in the future. So finally, this study was conducted in collaboration with many doctors and researchers in Japan. And I would like to thank Professor Mindy Gwen in support and Mindy loves all members. Thank you very much for your kind attention. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ito, for your excellent presentation. So now we have my co-moderators, Professor George, Professor Wei Lai here. May I also invite the panelists to turn on the camera and join the discussion. So for the audience, please feel free to use the Q&A and chat function to ask questions, while, of course, we also have a lively discussion ahead. So maybe I'll take the opportunity to ask the first questions. Dr. Ito, you highlighted that in your meta-analysis, the GDP does not appear to affect the prevalence of MAFLD, unlike what was reported in the China study. So why do you think it's the case? Do you think it is because the economic situation in different prefectures of Japan may be more homogeneous than what we observe in China?
Thank you for your important question. I showed the Japan has no significant differences between the by the GPP and the patient incomes. So the Japan is the government insurance, all covered the health and in all people in Japan. So maybe I think the economical level is almost the same. Almost the. I'm sorry. I think the prevalence of NAFLD is equal by the GPP, and so due to the maybe the economical level, so the I'm sorry, the maybe the I think I'm sorry, I have no detailed information, but I think maybe
no problem. This is largely speculative, right?
Yes.
Now, another major finding in your study is the forecasting part. But of course, forecasting will be affected by many factors. So in your analysis, you are assuming that the rise will be linear, but we know that for many diseases, the trajectory may not be the case. So do you have data in Japan regarding the prediction of the subsequent trend in obesity and diabetes, for example? And do you think that it may start to plateau?
Something. You mean this?
So So when you forecast the trend of different diseases, so of course the simplest way would be to make it linear. So it rises 1% in the past 2 years, and therefore in the next 20 years it will rise by 10%. But many times it is not the case. So but we may draw analogy from other related metabolic diseases such as diabetes and obesity. And I know that in Japan you have a wealth of health-related data, so that may be quite enlightening. So do you have any idea of the projection for obesity and diabetes?
Yes, that's very important question. But maybe the first is we doctors recommended the health checkup and to reduce the westernization diet. So and check the at least one time per year for health checkup. But so increase by increasing the high calorie and high fat. So we recommended the exercise and reduce the body weight. So for obese or overweight, but we have the there are about 20% lean NAFLD in Japan. So for lean NAFLD, it's very difficult to reduce the weight. So it's not useful, I think. For especially, it's important. Exercise is very important, I think.
Yes, certainly.
If I can just make a comment, two things. I think in terms of the income, when you look at the study from China, the lowest income group was less than 13,000, and the highest income group was, I think it went 6,000 to 13,000. So double the income from the lowest to the highest. Whereas in the Japanese study, just because of the average economic well-being, the lowest was sort of 23,000 to 27,000. So really, because of Japan's economic success, the gap between the four groups is much, much less. And that might be one explanation. They're all eating and having pretty good income. The other comment I'd like to make is that this business about the PNPLA3, I think there's been a lot of worldwide literature. PNPLA3 is associated, it's not associated. My own belief is that PNP3LA3 is clearly related, whether you're lean MAFLD or obese MAFLD or overweight MAFLD. But what ends up happening is that if you've got, just very simply put, if you've got obese MAFLD and you've already got 70% of your liver full of fat, your PNPLA3 risk might increase it from 73% to 78%, 5%. But if you're a lean MAFLD, because you're lean, the predisposition is manifest more in the lean patients. But I think in all of the groups, it clearly contributes to steatosis, but it just comes up when you do epidemiological analysis, because the lean MAFLD patients tend to have lower degrees of steatosis, and that might actually be part of the reason.
Yes, Professor George, I agree with you. Now, since Professor Wei has joined us, maybe I'll pick your brain regarding the economic issue. So in some developed countries, we have observed the fact that actually it is among the poorer people in those countries who would have more metabolic diseases such as obesity and also actually MAFLD. So this is because in those countries, high energy food is available, but poorer people do not have a lot of choices, and they may not be able to afford the healthier choices. But apparently this has not happened in China yet, according to the published studies. What Professor Wei,
You're
you have
muted.
to unmute first.
Oh, sorry. Very nice to see you and Professor George, Professor Wang. And it's very good question. And actually, in China, we do not have this situation. So, I would like to to request advice and the comments from Professor George and Professor Wang. And here, we used the MAFLD definition. Then you can find that the MAFLD definition is very good to separate the NIN and the MAFLD with fibrosis and without fibrosis. And this definition it could be they help us to identify with the fibrosis patients. I mean, so NIN MAFLD. So also in Hong Kong the first definition, NIN diabetes, it came from Hong Kong. So I think the Professor Wang also can see NIN MAFLD. So what's your comments and what's your experience?
Okay, so in our previous studies, of course, methods occur in the lean population, but by definition, since we are talking about metabolic associated, those individuals have to have other metabolic risk factors, most notably diabetes, but some may have other metabolic risk factors. Now, on the whole, we found that lean individuals tend to have less severe liver histology. So this was confirmed in multi-center studies in Australia and Europe and also others. Whether or not they would have a higher mortality rate is still a matter of debate because many of the studies are not well balanced. So people with lean but MAFLD tend to be older. So as Dr. Ito has beautifully illustrated, if you adjust for other factors, including age, then the impact on leanness on the adverse outcome is no longer there. And Professor George, together with the European group, has also got a very well-cited paper in Gut, talking about the same thing. So in their cohorts, again, lean patients tended to have less severe histology, and the outcomes did not differ in that particular study, actually.
Thank you.
But yeah, there is actually we've just published a very good study. I actually do think that lean MAFLD, including lean hypertension, lean diabetes, they all have worse prognosis. And I think there's been a recent paper published from France, from Lawrence Safati, a community-based study of 139,000 patients, also showing that lean community patients have a higher incidence of liver-related death, CKD death, hypertension death, cardiovascular death. And I think part of the issue, and we just published this in Metabolism recently, is that even though you have a good profile to start off with, what ends up happening is that the response of the macrophage, the adaptive response in a lean patient, is actually very quickly lost as the disease progresses. So the macrophages actually become more responsive to TLR stimuli. And so they end up having a much more rapid prognosis. And I think in the next couple of years, we will actually see some clarity on this. And I think we're actually getting some very good mechanistic handles on why this might happen. But I think it's actually real.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor George. So we are cognizant of the time, so maybe I'll ask Professor George Lau and Professor Omata whether you have further comments and also to close the session.
Thank you, Professor Vincent Wong. I always call you Vincent, but you are really very, very good academics, so I call you Professor Vincent Wong. This webinar is very important because we carry the purpose of APASL to encourage the good investigators and publish in Hepatology International, and which is our official journal for our society. This is the second session, and it's really touched on a very important issues, irrespective of some of the understandings on the terminology, but doubtless liver steatosis is becoming a more and more important health problems in Asia Pacific regions. And it's very important that we share all the data. And congratulations to Minda, because 2 papers are all from you and your efforts in Asia Pacific regions. And I really hope that people like you from Stanford will participate more in our activities. Our next sessions, I would like to say, would be conducted on the 29th of September, 2023. And the topic at that time will be acute on chronic liver failure. At the same time, Fridays 5 to 6. And I hope that everybody will mark the calendars. And once again, I would like to congratulate the authors of these 2 papers, one from China and one from Japan, for the excellent work. So thank you very much. Whether Professor Omatis would like to add a few comments if he is here.
I'm here. George, thank you very much. Closing remarks, almost. So after the closing remarks, I say thank you very much, Vincent Wang and Dr. Wu and Dr. Ito. But in particular, I appreciate Jacob George attending this by saying lean NASH problems. I think for us, Japan, for the last maybe 70 years, I don't see many obese patients when comparing to the one I saw in the States. But still, there is people suffering from these particular diseases. So lean NASH is a very important topic, and pathogenesis is a key issue for us. So maybe we better work on together. Thank you very much. 谢谢.
谢谢。
谢谢。
谢谢. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Omata, Professor Zhuang.
And we would, if the chairman agrees, we will close the sessions. Jacob, Vincent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will see you
Bye-bye.
in September. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
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 Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, Dr. Wu, nice. Good. Omata.
Thank you, Professor
Dr.
Omata.
Thank
Wu,
you
nice.
very much.
Oh, really, how are you?
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Omata. Very good.
Yeah, careful about the driving.
Yeah.